I am the invisible guest at a wedding I paid for. Not forgotten, just excluded, quietly, clinically, as if kindness had an expiration date and mine had passed. My name is Rachel Lynn. I'm 37. I live in Portland, Oregon, and I build things no one sees: data pipelines, predictive systems, back-end models. But the most invisible thing I ever built was a wedding that wasn't mine. A perfect, shimmering dream for my younger sister. I wrote every check, chose the menu, booked the venue, approved the dress. I did everything except attend. 5 days before the ceremony, I received a brief, formal email. Due to changes in the final guest list and logistical limitations, your attendance will no longer be required. Required. As if I were a temp worker being released from a contract. No phone call, no explanation, no thank you. Just a clean deletion. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I stared at the screen for almost an hour in silence, watching the email sender's name blur and sharpen. And then, I did what I always do. I opened the spreadsheet, reviewed the vendor contracts, and began making phone calls. But I'll get to that part later. First, I want to explain how someone becomes the kind of woman who gets erased like that and stays silent for far too long. I was born in a city that rains 200 days a year in a family that never noticed. My father, Hank Lynn, was a forklift operator at a shipping plant. My mother, Teresa, worked reception at a dental clinic and insisted we never burden anyone with feelings. She believed emotions were messy, indulgent things. Control your storms, she'd say. Don't make others mop up your rain. My sister Katie came 5 years later. Fragile. That's the word everyone used. She had asthma, eczema, night terrors, stomach aches, anything that made her fragile, delicate, worthy of special care. And me. I was the easy one. The one who made her own sandwiches by 4. Took the city bus alone at 8. And learned to fold laundry standing on a milk crate. By 10, I had memorized the silence that came after being told, "You're stronger. You can handle it." Strong girls are just invisible girls with heavier bags. I helped Katie with her homework. Missed my first sleepover to babysit her when Mom had a migraine. I packed her school lunches when our parents forgot. And I never complained, because strong girls don't. They endure, they adjust. They clean up quietly so nobody else feels bad. By high school, I had taught myself how to apply for FAFSA, filled out scholarship applications, and boarded a Greyhound to UC Berkeley with a duffel bag and a $10 bill in my pocket. Katie stayed home. She tried community college, then art school, then dropped out to work on healing her inner child. Our parents bought her a refurbished car and set up a monthly allowance. When I got a promotion and told Mom, she said, "That's great, honey. Do you think you could help Katie with rent this month?" And I did. Again and again. Every raise I got became a new expectation. Every vacation I skipped was a quiet subsidy. I never said no, because saying no would make me the difficult one. And in our family, difficult was worse than invisible. It meant ungrateful. The first time I realized how far I had vanished from my own life was the night I found out Katie was engaged. Mom called breathless with joy, like she'd been waiting to finally be proud of something that could be posted online. He proposed during sunset at the lake. She gushed. She cried. It was perfect. I was at my desk, editing a PowerPoint for a mental health nonprofit. "That's sweet," I said softly. "She wants a fall wedding, red leaves, candles, a string quartet. Do you think you could help out with the deposits? Just until Brandon's family contributes." I didn't ask how much. I just nodded. That was my first mistake. By the 3rd month of planning had wired over $31,000. By the 6th, $60,000. And by the time I received that cold little email with the subject, "Guest list adjustment," the final number was $94,300. For a wedding I wouldn't be attending. I stared at that number like it was a stranger's life I had funded. And maybe it was. Because somewhere in that long, expensive process, I stopped being a sister and became an asset. No voice, no seat, no presence, just a balance sheet. I used to believe love meant giving without needing anything back. But I've learned that sometimes, the more you give, the more invisible you become. Because when they know you'll never ask for credit, they stop seeing you at all. If you've ever felt like the one holding it all together, while everyone else forgets to look back, this story is for you. They say betrayal rarely arrives like thunder. It creeps in quietly, camouflaged in smiles, softened by good intentions. My first thread didn't snap when I was erased from the wedding. It snapped months earlier. On an ordinary Tuesday, over the smallest thing, a pair of champagne-colored shoes. I had just finished reviewing vendor contracts when Katie sent me a message. "Can you order these from me before the price goes up?" Attached was a link: imported heels from a designer I'd never heard of, retailing at $8 or $20. I stared at the screen. Not because I couldn't afford them, I could, but because something in my chest tugged back. This wasn't for the venue deposit. Not for catering. Not for our father's recovery fund or mom's rent. This was for a luxury accessory, an afterthought that would probably be kicked off by the second dance. And the worst part, she didn't say please. Just, "Can you order?" Like I was her assistant. Like I was the fulfillment center for her curated life. I didn't respond right away. For the first time, I hesitated. That hesitation cost me. The next morning, I woke to a call from Mom. Her voice was clipped, rehearsed. "Rachel, I don't want to make a big deal out of this, but Katie's really upset. She feels like you're becoming distant." Because I didn't buy her shoes. I asked, half laughing, half hoping it was a misunderstanding. Mom sighed. "It's not about the shoes. It's about support. You've always been the one she counted on. This isn't the time to change that." Change what? Change the fact that for 30 years I'd bent every corner of myself to make space for Katie. Change the part where I said yes even when I was bleeding inside. I bit my lip. I just needed a moment to think. "You always think too much," Mom said sharply. "You analyze everything. It's exhausting." That word hit me harder than it should have. Exhausting. The irony burned. I was the one covering invoices, making spreadsheets, calming down caterers, writing emails for the wedding planner because Katie didn't vibe with admin stuff. And now I was the one exhausting them. I hung up without saying goodbye. It was the first time I ever did that. That night, I poured a glass of wine and opened the old Google sheet. The cells blinked back at me like a trail of receipts for a life I had funded but not lived. The $94,300, none of it refundable, none of it mine. I clicked into one cell and added a note in red: "Champagne shoes not purchased." It felt petty, but it also felt like a line drawn in pencil across a map I was finally learning to navigate for myself. The real unraveling came days later. I had booked a florist consultation in San Francisco, a vendor Katie was obsessed with, despite the fact that she'd never arranged a bouquet in her life. I flew down, took the meeting, selected samples, forwarded everything to her inbox. She replied only with, "Oog, why didn't you pick the blush peonies? No thank you." No acknowledgement of the 4-hour flight. Just complaint. It hit me then I wasn't planning a wedding. I was playing a role. The responsible one. The one who makes it all happen. Silently, off stage. Except this wasn't a stage anymore. It was a courtroom. And I was the defense attorney for a client who didn't even show up. That weekend, I didn't answer Katie's texts. I turned off my phone. Took a long walk along the Hawthorne Bridge. I watched the water ripple quietly under the steel beams and wondered, what happens when the strong one simply stops? What if I just said no? What if I let things fall apart? I didn't. Not yet. But I did start to imagine it. And sometimes, that's the beginning of escape. They never expect the strong one to break. But strength isn't silence. It's choosing not to let someone turn your heart into a transaction. It's knowing the moment you say, "Enough," isn't selfish. It's self-return. To anyone who's ever been told they're too analytical, too practical, too much, when they dare to pause and breathe, your pause is sacred. Your breath is yours. There's something chilling about seeing your name on every dotted line and realizing no one else remembers you were there. 3 weeks before the wedding, I received an urgent call from the event coordinator, Naomi, someone I had never spoken to before. "Hi, is this Rachel Lynn, the financial contact for the Whitmore Miller wedding?" "Yes," I said, though even then I hesitated. The way she said my name, it felt disconnected from the joy people usually associate with weddings. I just wanted to confirm final payments for the rehearsal dinner and vintage car rental. "I'll send the new breakdown via email. Let me know which card you'll be using." Which card? Not if I was paying, just how. Like I was a company account, not a sister. When the email came, I opened the attachments. Coastal Flavors Catering of 14,800 Lucent Candles, 350 Vintage Limo Service Bonded, 200 Jazz Band, 4,000 all marked P8R. Linen, my initials sat like shadows under every service. And still no one had spoken to me about the guest list, about my seat, about whether I'd be walking Katie down the aisle, or standing in a corner like an anonymous sponsor. The contract I was signing, over and over, wasn't just financial. It was emotional, it said. I will be the one who holds everything. But I never got a copy. The real crack came when I asked a simple question during one of our rare family calls. "Has the planner confirmed my seat at the head table?" There was silence. Then Katie said, flatly, "Actually, Mom thought it would be best if you sat with the vendor team, since you've been helping with logistics." I blinked. "You mean with the staff?" "Well, yeah, it just fits the flow of the night better. You're not really part of Brandon's family, and there's limited space on our side." Mom chimed in quickly. "It's just a small detail, Ratch. You're still invited. Obviously. Obviously." I ended the call, walked straight to the kitchen, and stared at my reflection in the microwave door. I didn't look angry. I didn't even look hurt. I looked erased. That night I opened a folder on my laptop, vendor contracts, Katie wedding, 17 PDFs, each signed by one person, me. No Katie, no Brandon, no Teresa, just Rachel Lynn in neat digital ink, and tucked inside the Somerset Grand venue agreement was a clause I hadn't noticed before. Clause 12.2, client retains full authority over guest list changes and vendor communications unless delegated in writing. I leaned back in my chair. There it was. I wasn't just the silent benefactor. I was the legal client, the one with authority. The contract no one read except me. It's a strange thing, realizing power you didn't know you held. For so long, I thought I had no voice because I didn't use it. But the truth, I had been given a megaphone and taught to whisper. That night I didn't send angry messages. I didn't make calls. I made a spreadsheet. Column A vendor, column B zine. Service, column C amount paid, column D signed by, column E cancellation terms by 100 a.m. The total stood at the 94,300. The refund potential, roughly 42,000. Still within the window, still under my name. And for the first time, I stared at that spreadsheet not with regret, but with clarity. Sometimes you are not voiceless. You're just out of breath from carrying the entire house on your back. The power we think we lack is often waiting in a folder, in a clause, in a line we were too tired to highlight. I didn't burn anything that night. I simply lit a small, slow fuse of realization. And when you've been invisible for too long, even your own signature becomes a way to say, "I exist." The hardest decisions are never loud. They don't slam doors or scream into phones. They whisper, "It's time." I sat at my dining table, rain tapping softly against the window, my hands resting on the laptop keyboard. The screen glowed with the Somerset Grand contract. Clause 12.2, I read it again and again, like a prayer I hadn't realized I believed in. Client retains full authority over vendor coordination and termination, unless otherwise delegated in writing. No one had delegated anything. I was still the client, still the legal signatory, still the one with the final say. And for once, I didn't want anyone's permission to act. I opened my inbox and began drafting. Subject: Contract termination request, Whitmore, Miller wedding to Kimberly Atwood, Senior Event Manager, Somerset Grand. Dear Kimberly, I am the legal signatory and financial sponsor for the Whitmore, Miller wedding scheduled for October 14 at Somerset Grand. Due to recent developments, I am formally requesting cancellation of all contracted services under my name. Per clause 12.2 and 14.1, this notice falls within the 5-day pre-event window, qualifying for a 30% refund of non-irreversible services. Kindly confirm the refund process and release of remaining vendor coordination. Thank you for your professionalism. Rachel Lynn. I hovered over the send button for 30 seconds. Not out of doubt, but because I wanted to feel the exact moment my life began splitting from theirs. Then I clicked send, and just like that, the wedding I had funded began to unravel. Next came Coastal Flavors Catering. Rachel, said Michael, the manager, is something wrong? We just finalized the seafood pairings yesterday. I'm terminating the contract, I said calmly. The bride and groom may contact you directly if they wish to continue, but I'm no longer financially involved. Michael paused. Legally, that's your right. We'll send the adjusted invoice by tomorrow. I thanked him, hung up, and called the Blue-Mared Florals next. A woman named Alina confirmed I was still the primary contact. If you're pulling out, we'll cancel the flower imports, she said. Refunds apply to all pre-order items. One by one, I called every vendor, the jazz band from New Orleans, the candle company, the photo booth rental, the transportation team, even the custom place card designer. Some asked why. I gave no drama, just facts. The sponsor has withdrawn. Thank you for your service. It took 8 hours, 5 calls, 23 emails, and a single reheated bowl of rice to undo what took 6 months to build. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt clean. At 2:03 a.m., I reopened the spreadsheet. Total spent the 94,300 total, recovered 44 of 780. The rest, I marked it in gray next to a simple note, tuition, because that's what it was. Not a loss, not a tragedy. Just the price I finally paid. To stop being the strong one in silence. Reflection. Sometimes reclaiming your power isn't a scream. It's a line in a spreadsheet, a clause in a contract, a quiet no more, whispered to yourself in a dark apartment. They taught me that strength meant never dropping anything. But I've learned this. Real strength is knowing when to put it down. The first wave wasn't anger. It was confusion. A kind of chaos that only happens when the one you've always counted on suddenly stops answering the phone. 3 days after I canceled the wedding, my phone buzzed relentlessly. 12 missed calls, 8 voicemails, 5 texts from mom, subject lines like, "Are you okay? Rachel, don't do this. You're overreacting." But I didn't answer. I didn't owe them urgency anymore. The next message came from Aunt Lillian in Florida. Rachel, I'm hearing things from the family. Is it true you called off the wedding? People are worried about you. Should I come visit? Worried, not curious, not compassionate, just worried, like I was a cracked pipe leaking into the family foundation. And then came the story. Not mine. Theirs. A college friend messaged me on Facebook. Hey Rach, just wanted to say I'm thinking of you. I heard the wedding didn't happen because you're going through something emotionally. If you need anything, I'm here. I sat in my kitchen holding my phone in both hands like it might shatter. Emotionally unstable. Going through something. They were building a new narrative. Fast and clean and sympathetic. The kind of story where I was the problem. And Katie was the heartbroken bride whose sister just couldn't cope. Not once did they mention the contracts, the money, the seat I never got at the table, just me, as an emotional liability. The irony, after years of being called too practical, too cold, too capable, now I was suddenly too fragile. I wasn't mad. I was done. That afternoon, I sent one final email. Subject: clarification, contract cancellations, to all vendors involved in the Whitmore Miller event. My name is Rachel Lynn, and I was the sole signatory and financial sponsor of the Whitmore Miller wedding scheduled for October 14. Due to my removal from all planning decisions and the revocation of my guest status, I exercised my contractual rights to terminate agreements under my name. These actions were not the result of emotional instability, but a professional and legal response to a boundary being crossed. I remained fully sound of mind. I simply stopped participating in a narrative where I was erased. Thank you for your time and respect. Rachel and I copied every vendor, every planner, every assistant and coordinator on file. Let them know not the drama, just the data. One by one, replies came back. We appreciate your transparency. Your professionalism throughout this process has been exceptional. We are sorry for the circulation of misinformation. We confirms, no notes of psychological concern were ever reported in our system. The truth had a paper trail, and this time I was the one writing it. That night, Mom called again. I answered. Her voice was soft, sweet. "To Rachel, honey, do you need me to fly out? Everyone's really concerned." I stayed silent. Then she said it. "Why are you making everything such a mess?" I let out a quiet laugh. I didn't make a mess. I just stopped cleaning up everyone else's. There was a pause. Then she said it. The thing that always came when I stood up for myself. "You're overthinking this. You're being dramatic." I exhaled slowly. Years ago, I might have apologized, but now, no, I said. "I'm just not playing the role you wrote for me anymore." And I hung up. People will always have a story about you, especially when you stop being useful to them. They'll call it a breakdown when you finally draw a line. They'll call it a betrayal when you stop betraying yourself. But you don't have to correct every lie. Sometimes you just need to stand still and let the truth echo in your silence. Because for once, the silence was finally yours. I wasn't looking for proof. I had already decided to walk away, quietly, with dignity. I had canceled every contract, closed every tab, and muted every group chat tied to the wedding. But one night, while clearing old files from my inbox, I saw a familiar thread buried beneath months of back and forth subject. Internal notes, final planning discussion, sender Kelly Freeman, event manager, Somerset Grand. It had been sent weeks ago. I'd been copied on it accidentally. At the time, I was still funding everything, still included, barely. Curious, I opened it. The thread was long, filled with minor updates, floral arrangements, seating chart changes, a new cocktail name, harmless, until I saw this line: "For budgeting and design decisions, just coordinate with me and Katie. Keep Rachel out of this part. She's too pragmatic. She'll question every detail and ruin the tone we're trying to set." Teresa Lynn, my mother. I didn't move. I read it again, and then again, until the words stopped feeling like a betrayal and started feeling like the truth they'd never meant me to hear. Too pragmatic. Will ruin the tone. Keep Rachel out. This wasn't about me being overbearing or controlling or overly involved. This was about control, theirs. They wanted the money, not the voice. They wanted the venue, the custom lighting, the imported florals, everything my name had made possible. But they didn't want me attached to it. Because I didn't fit the aesthetic. Because I was a reminder of reality in their curated fantasy. Because I ask questions. Because I see through the glitter. I leaned back in my chair. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. I felt aware. I had been left out on purpose. Not by accident. Not because I was hard to love. But because I had value beyond what they could control. I closed the laptop. And I didn't cry. I just knew. That same night, I received a message from Rick, my friend and attorney. He'd been helping me monitor the wedding fallout, mostly for legal peace of mind. "Rachel, I've reviewed Brandon Miller's financial documents from the vendor credit files. There's something you should know." I called immediately. Rick's voice was calm, clipped, broke. Less than $5,000 in savings, 2 maxed out cards. A personal loan of $37,000 from a betting app. I blinked. Gambling. Has not officially in treatment, but the transaction pattern's consistent. Everything slowed. Brandon, the polished anesthesiologist, the went to Duke success story, the man they all praised like a walking LinkedIn page, was an illusion. He wasn't chosen for love. He was chosen for optics. And I was chosen for funding. Suddenly, every memory clicked into place, my mother emphasizing Brandon's resume more than Katie's feelings. Katie pushing for the most expensive options without hesitation. The urgency behind, just this deposit, or just this month's rent. They weren't building a life. They were building a stage, and I was the scaffolding. No one thanks the scaffolding when the show begins. There are truths we suspect for years, until one email removes all doubt. The most painful betrayals don't scream. They whisper, "Keep her out." And they forget we might be watching. But here's the thing. When you've spent your whole life being too practical, you know exactly where to find the receipts. I didn't plan to see him again. Not in Denver. Not on a rooftop with champagne flutes and AI founders discussing healthcare innovations under string lights. I was there for a public health conference, one I'd attended for 5 years running. The kind of event where ideas moved faster than people, and everyone wore their ambition like cologne. It had been almost 2 months since I canceled the wedding. The family had gone quiet. The refunds had cleared. I was rebuilding, quietly. Then I heard his voice. "Rachel." I didn't turn right away, but I didn't need to. Brandon Miller stood 3 steps away, drink in hand, collar loose, eyes glossed from whatever number glass of whiskey he was on. "Small world, huh?" he said, swaying slightly. "Where's your sister?" I looked up, steady. "She's not here." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You're always working," he muttered. I stayed silent. He took a long sip, then stepped closer, voice low, tone darker. "You think you're better than all of us, don't you?" I blinked, playing the saint. Covering the wedding. Canceling everything like you're some kind of tragic heroine. Grow up. I took a breath. I did what I thought was right. And then I stopped when I realized no one else cared if it was me doing it. He laughed, more bark than amusement. "You weren't doing it for her. You were doing it for control. That's what this was about. Power." I let him speak. Because people reveal everything when they think they're winning. Then he said it. "You were just a gold card to them. A bank. You think Katie ever saw you as anything else." And that's when I pulled out my phone, held it chest level, tapped record. "Thanks for confirming," I said. "This is being recorded." Brandon froze. Completely. For a moment, his face drained of color. Then it flushed red. "Are you crazy?" "No," I said calmly. "I'm just done letting people rewrite the story." He looked around, eyes darting. Murmurs nearby, the clink of glass. One hotel staff member noticed the tension, then quietly stepped away. Brandon leaned in, his breath thick with bourbon. "You think that clip will save you? You think anyone cares what I said?" I didn't flinch. "No, but I do. Because next time someone asks why I walked away, I won't have to explain anymore. I'll just hit play." He dropped his glass. It shattered across the rooftop tile. And just like that, Brandon Miller cracked. No suit, no degree, no polished Instagram fiancé energy. Just a scared, cornered man who realized the mask no longer worked. "Katie will hate you forever," he said bitterly. I smiled. "Good. Because if she loved me but still erased me to protect you, then that's not love I need." I walked away before he could respond. Back in my hotel room, I saved the recording, labeled it, Brandon Roofed Up Truth. What? I didn't post it, didn't send it to Katie. I just kept it, as proof that I hadn't imagined it all. That gaslighting can wear a suit and pour you a drink. That silence can be a form of strength, but so can proof. Some confrontations don't end in shouting. They end in clarity. In that moment when someone tells on themselves and you don't interrupt. Because you don't need revenge, you need truth, on the record. And when you finally hear it, you don't even feel angry. You just feel free. I didn't attend the wedding. That part had already been decided the moment they removed me from the guest list, 5 days before the event I had paid for. But the wedding still happened. Sort of. It was a Saturday in late September, the kind where the sky never makes up its mind. In Seattle, the drizzle danced on my window like it was waiting for a cue. I wasn't curious at first, but curiosity has a way of slipping in through the cracks left by betrayal. The first update came from Judith, my mom's old friend who still emails like it's 2004. Did you really not attend? The whole thing felt off. People say you've disowned the family. Just thought I'd reach out. The bride looked a little sad. The second message came through LinkedIn, of all places. A former coworker of mine, who happened to be Brandon's second cousin, sent a short note. Hey, I don't know what happened, but the wedding felt hollow. No flowers. No vibe. Just folding chairs and Bluetooth speakers. It felt like she was waiting for someone who never showed. I stared at the message for a long time. Not because I wanted pity, but because for the first time someone noticed the gap I left behind. Not just the money, the presents. Here's what I know about the wedding. It didn't take place at the Somerset Grand. That contract was canceled. Instead, it moved to a public hall in Littleton, a suburb near Brandon's parents. Fiona, his mother, knew a guy. There were no Ecuadorian roses, no jazz band from New Orleans, no candle-lit dinner, just pre-recorded playlists on a Bluetooth speaker and a last-minute potluck-style dinner. The dress, not the 9,800 couture piece from Paris I had wired funds for. Katie wore her engagement party dress, repurposed with a new sash. No one spoke of that publicly, but people noticed. And what struck me wasn't the downgrade, it was the energy. Multiple guests said the same thing. She kept looking around like she was waiting for someone. I wasn't smug. I didn't cheer. This wasn't revenge. This was absence, and absence speaks. Louder than confrontation, sharper than emails. It speaks in the silence between clinks of champagne glasses. It speaks in photos where one chair remains empty. It speaks in the eyes of a bride scanning the room and finding no anchor. Back in Seattle, I spent that Saturday in a small cafe. I wore a gray knit sweater, ordered a single shot of espresso, and sat by the window. The city drizzled, muted, gentle. Like it knew I didn't need noise anymore. I opened my phone, typed a note to myself. You were never meant to be celebrated. You were meant to fund the celebration. Until you walked away, and everything dimmed. Sometimes you don't need to be there to make your presence known. Sometimes the seat you leave empty speaks louder than the role you used to fill. And when they ask, why didn't you come? You don't have to answer, because they already know. They just never thought you'd actually walk away. It arrived on a Tuesday morning, folded in silence without a stamp. No logo, no postmark. Just cream-colored paper, tucked in a plain envelope with one line on the front. For Rachel, no return address. My first thought wasn't fear or anger, it was instinct. Katie. Her handwriting had always been precise, slanted slightly left, like she was never quite ready to say what she meant. I held it for a long time in the kitchen, coffee cooling in my mug. The air smelled like rain and ginger. I hadn't cried in weeks. I wasn't planning to. But something about that envelope, it shook the dust from memories I thought I'd packed away. The letter was short. 1 page. No fancy stationery, no ink flourish. Just this: I have no excuse, and I'm not writing for forgiveness. This is the first time I feel clear enough to look back, and brave enough to name what I've lost. I lost Brandon 3 weeks after the wedding. He didn't leave because of money or love. He left because there was no one left to clean up his mess. I lost friends. I lost the picture I built. But the deepest loss was you. I believed, for too long, that you'd always be there. That love was automatic. That it didn't need tending or protecting. I was wrong. If you can spare one morning, not to fix anything, just to sit and listen, I'll wait. Even if your answer is silence. Katie, I didn't know what to feel. Not pity, not anger, something quieter. Something like stillness. The kind that comes when grief has already passed and only the ruins remain. Untouched, unexplained, accepted. 3 days later, I texted her a location. A quiet cafe in the Central District. One I went to when I needed silence that felt soft instead of sharp. No reply. But on Sunday, I arrived 10 minutes early, ordered a black espresso, sat by the window, and waited. She came. Hair tied low, sweater too big, no makeup. The curated version of Katie was gone. She looked real, exposed in the way people are when they've lost all their mirrors. She walked over slowly, didn't hug me, didn't smile, Just sat down. Thanks for coming. I nodded. Then she spoke. He had a second apartment, she whispered. I didn't know. His parents helped cover it. The rest, he borrowed from me. Or took. I didn't interrupt. I called Mom the night I found out. She said, you made your choice. Deal with it. Then she blocked me. Her voice cracked, but her eyes stayed dry. I'm working at a coffee shop now. Applied to restart school, sociology, UMass Boston. I don't know how I'll afford it, but I want to try. I sip my coffee. Watch the rain hit the window like Morse code. Katie looked up. I'm not asking you to fix anything. I just didn't want our last memory to be you being erased from a life you built. I set the mug down. Then I said, softly, if you're really standing on your own this time, I'll stand beside you. Not to hold you up. Just to witness it. She nodded. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. We just sat, two women setting down old burdens. Two sisters no longer playing roles in someone else's script. Only then did I feel it. Not closure. Not forgiveness. But beginning. Not every story ends with repair. But sometimes, if both people show up without demands, with their hands empty and their pride in check, you can choose to stand next to each other again. Not because the past didn't happen, but because you're ready to stop carrying it. I didn't forgive her that day. Forgiveness isn't a light switch. It's a slow, aching process, like thawing out a part of you that's been frozen for years. But I did choose to stay seated, to listen, to witness. And in that moment, that choice felt bigger than closure. It felt like agency. That same night, I went home to my apartment. It was small, still sparsely furnished, still quiet in a way that had once felt like lack. But now it felt like mine. I made tea, turned off my phone, opened my laptop, and started writing not a story, not a letter, but something I had never given myself permission to do rules. For me. Not the family, not the system I was born into, not the role I was trained to perform, just for Rachel Lynn. The woman beneath the strong one. Here's what I wrote. 1. I have the right to say no, without explanation, because silence is not consent, and exhaustion is not duty too. I am not a wallet with feelings. I don't exist to fund someone else's fantasy. 3. I am not the villain in someone else's rebranding. Just because I stopped carrying the weight doesn't mean I dropped it on purpose. 4. I deserve to rest. Without guilt. There is no medal for the most self-sacrificing sister. 5. I am allowed to walk away from stories that erase me, even if I helped write the first chapter. When I finished, I printed the list, taped it to the inside of my closet door, not for the world to see. For me, every morning I put on clothes, every night I hung my courage back up. It was my mirror. And for the first time in my life, it didn't reflect what I owed others, only what I promised myself. The following week, I did something small, but meaningful. I changed my phone number. No announcement. No, just so you know, text. No forwarding line. Just a quiet goodbye to a system that only rang when it needed something. In the first 2 weeks, Mom called the old number 13 times, then silence. We spend so much time waiting for others to see our worth. But healing begins the moment you write your own rules and choose to live by them, even when no one else agrees. I didn't get a thank you. I didn't get justice. I didn't get my money back. But I got myself back, and that was enough. The room was plain. 6th floor, fluorescent lights. A whiteboard with erasable quotes no one actually erased. We met every Wednesday, Women in Tech Leadership and Self-Advocacy Group, 12 of us, ranging from interns to executives. No cameras, no recording, just notebooks and voices. For the first few weeks, I said nothing. I listened to stories of microaggressions. Too loud, too cold, too direct, too emotional. Of being talked over, doubted, ignored, dismissed. And still I stayed silent, because my wounds weren't in code reviews or project credits. They were at the dinner table, in birthday cards unsigned, in wedding chairs that didn't have my name. But then came the prompt. Name a time you showed up for someone and they didn't show up for you. The room went still. And before I could stop myself, I heard my voice. I spent nearly 100,000 on my sister's wedding, and 5 days before the ceremony they removed me from the guest list. Silence, thick, weighted, no gasps. Just stillness. The kind that only comes when women recognize pain that isn't rare, just rarely said out loud. I expected judgment. But I got something else. Janelle, our group facilitator, set her pen down and said gently, "That wasn't a failure. That was tuition. Expensive, but very, very clear." I smiled. Tate, then wider. Like something had cracked open in me. Something I didn't even know was holding my breath. After the session, a woman I barely knew tapped my arm. "I've been the sponsor before," she said. "Thank you for saying it out loud." Another woman added, "Sometimes they call it strength, because they know you'll never ask for anything in return." We nodded. A quiet chorus of women who'd all been told, "You're so mature. You're so good at handling things. You just get it." What they really meant was, "You make it easier for us to be selfish." That night, I walked home in the rain, not running, not hurrying, just walking, present in a city I had once disappeared inside of. I passed a bridal shop, paused. Inside was a mannequin in a window, lace and tulle and everything I used to associate with Katie's dream. I looked at it for 5 seconds. Then I walked away. Not bitter, just uninterested. It wasn't my dream. It never had been. And now, it wasn't my burden either. There is a kind of power in naming what hurt you, out loud, without shrinking. Sometimes the most healing space isn't therapy. It's a room full of strangers who say, "I see you. I've been there. And you're not crazy." And when that happens, you don't just feel less alone. You feel seen. I didn't burn anything. There were no dramatic garbage bags. No middle of the night catharsis. No Taylor Swift soundtrack playing in the background. I simply opened the closet and began. It started with the beige wool scarf, a gift from Katie years ago with a tag still attached. I remembered the occasion. Her birthday, she forgot mine the same year. Then came the photo frame, whitewashed wood, etched with cursive, sisters by chance, friends by choice. It had never held a photo. And then, at the very back of the shelf, still tucked in its little cardboard box, a notebook, wrapped in soft pink leather, a 30th birthday gift, still blank. All of it was fine, pretty, polite, but not mine. I placed them gently in a cardboard box, not out of spite, but to release, because objects can carry the weight of unspoken expectations, of silent comparisons, of roles you never signed up for, but played anyway. I wasn't erasing Katie from my life. I was erasing the version of me that existed only in her world. The dependable one, the wallet, the emotional backstop. She didn't need that version anymore, and neither did I. Then I changed the sheets on my bed. Soft indigo, not neutral, not beige. A color that didn't apologize for existing. I hung new curtains. Bought myself 3 novels I had kept in my someday wish list for years. Lit a candle, not for mood, just for scent. I poured a glass of wine, sat cross-legged on my bed, and opened the first book. Halfway through chapter 1, I realized something. I wasn't lonely. I was alone, and at peace. There's a difference. A vast, glorious difference. A week later, I donated the box. No big farewell. No explanation to anyone. Because when you let go of the past quietly, you don't owe the world a declaration. Only yourself. Reflection healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a quiet Saturday, a new bedsheet, a shelf that finally breathes. You don't have to throw the past out with rage. You can fold it, box it, bless it, and set it down. Because peace isn't what you get when everyone apologizes. It's what you find when you stop waiting for them to. It was a quiet Tuesday. Seattle was doing that thing it does. Damp air, clouds brushing the rooftops. Light that never quite committed to being daylight. I had just poured my first cup of coffee when I heard the soft chime on my laptop. New email. Subject line, "If you're free this weekend." It was from Katie. Not dramatic, not emotional, just soft. There's a gallery exhibit opening downtown. Student artists from the local colleges. One of my classmates is showing a piece on loss. It reminded me of us. In a way. If you're free, I'd love for you to come. No pressure. We could go for tea after. Just talk. Or not talk. Either way, I'll be there. Saturday, 4 p.m., Exhibit Room B, no emojis. No guilt, just a time, a place, and the freedom to choose. I closed the laptop. Not out of avoidance, but because I didn't need to decide right away. Something had shifted. This wasn't the Katie who demanded things. This wasn't the Katie who assumed I'd show up no matter how she treated me. This was someone asking, someone waiting, someone who had learned what silence costs. On Saturday I went. Not because I owed her, not because I wanted to fix anything, but because something inside me had settled. The exhibit was in an old industrial space repurposed as a community arts center. Raw wood beams, concrete floors, the scent of fresh paint and distant rain. I arrived a few minutes late. Katie was already there, standing by a canvas titled, "Things Left Unsaid." She didn't see me at first. Her hair was tied in a low braid. She wore a navy coat, no makeup, her shoulders rounded like she was still learning how to carry herself. I walked up quietly, stood beside her. She glanced over, didn't smile, didn't tear up, just nodded. Hey, I said. We looked at the painting. It was abstract, shades of gray with a jagged slash of red cutting through the middle. A small plaque beneath it read, "Sometimes survival looks like walking away." We both stared. Then Katie whispered, "I think that line's about you." I didn't correct her, because maybe it was. After the exhibit, we went for tea. Not a long conversation, not a confession session. Just 2 cups, 2 hands wrapped around something warm. When we parted, she didn't say, "Let's do this again." And I didn't say, "We're okay now." We just left it unfinished, in the best way, not broken, just in progress. Not every repair is a reunion. Sometimes healing is one small invitation, with no pressure, no performance, and no punishment if you say no. Sometimes the bravest thing someone can do is offer a door without demanding you walk through it. And sometimes you choose to open it anyway. The refund didn't come all at once. Vendors operate on timelines, contracts, percentages. But slowly over the course of weeks it trickled in, 44th, 780. Not a fortune. Not compared to what I had lost. But more than I ever expected to get back. At first, I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't touch it. It sat in a separate account under the name. Discretionary, no explanation needed. That name wasn't for the bank. It was for me. Because I had spent too many years explaining every choice. Why I didn't go on vacation. Why I still rented. Why I sent money instead of showing up. This time, I owed no one an itemized list, but I still made one, just for myself. Not of bills, not of gifts, but of restoration. I started with a door, a physical one. I replaced the old creaky door in my apartment with a new sliding panel of soft pine, custom, fitted with frosted glass and brushed nickel trim. Not because I needed it, but because I wanted the sound of something closing gently. Then I signed up for a 3-day artist retreat in Mendocino. Nothing fancy. Just a quiet space to paint, surrounded by ocean. I told no one I was going. I didn't post it online, didn't bring a camera, didn't even bring a phone charger. I painted poorly, a lot of gray, some burnt orange. The instructor said I had a strong sense of contrast. I didn't tell her that my life had taught me that. The next thing I did, I donated anonymously to a nonprofit that supports first-gen college women in STEM. I added a note to the fund admin. For the girl who learned how to fill out FAFSA alone while her sister was asleep in the next room. I cried that night, not because I was sad, but because I realized how long I'd gone without being seen by someone, even if that someone was myself. And lastly, I bought a new bookshelf. Had it custom, built by a local carpenter named Luis who told me, "Wood doesn't argue. It listens." It now holds every book I promised I'd read one day. Now, I read them, one by one, slowly. Like I'm feeding someone who was starved for years but didn't know she was hungry. Money can't buy healing, but it can buy space. And in that space, you can finally hear your own voice again. I didn't use the refund to punish anyone. I used it to rebuild something much harder to restore trust, in myself. It came on a Sunday, clear skies, no rain, one of those rare Pacific Northwest days where everything sparkles a little, like even the sidewalks are trying. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, embossed, no handwriting this time, just a printed return address, the Evergreen Foundation Annual Spring Gala inside a formal invitation. Dear Ms. Rachel Lynn, it is our pleasure to invite you as a guest of honor to our annual Spring Gala, recognizing leaders in data science, healthcare innovation, and philanthropic mentorship. Your work and quiet contributions have impacted lives more than you may know. There was a handwritten note below. You were nominated by several women from the Leadership Circle Mentorship Group. Thank you for showing up, even when it was hardest. I stared at it for a long time, not in disbelief, but because something inside me cracked, not from pain, but from release. I had been invited into so many rooms over the years where I was expected to stay quiet, to give to support. This was different. This room wanted me present, not as a sponsor, not as a stand-in, not as the strong one who never asks for anything, but as Rachel Lynn, a woman who said no and found her voice on the other side of it. I RSVP'd yes, and for the first time in years I bought a dress for me. Dark emerald, structured shoulders, long sleeves, no shimmer, just power, stitched softly in every line. When I arrived at the gala, I recognized no one at first, but they knew me, not from Instagram, not from wedding lists, from impact, from presence, from the kind of strength that doesn't carry everyone else's load anymore. Only her own, with pride. That night, as people gave speeches and glasses clinked, I stood near the back of the room, alone, but not lonely, and I realized this was the wedding I never got, not to a person, but to myself, to the version of me that finally stepped into the center of her own life, and stayed. Reflection: not all invitations are printed on paper. Some arrive as quiet realizations, soft beginnings, or a still voice inside that says, you don't have to prove your worth anymore. You've already earned your place. Sometimes the most beautiful room you'll ever walk into is the one where no one needs you to disappear. I used to think love was sacrifice. That if you gave enough time, money, space, silence, eventually you'd be seen. Eventually you'd be loved back. But love that demands your disappearance is not love. It's extraction. Love doesn't make you smaller. It doesn't erase your name from the guest list. It doesn't call you too much when you speak up, or too cold when you stop cleaning up everyone else's mess. Love is the friend who says, you're not wrong. You're just tired. It's the woman in a room full of strangers who tells you, that wasn't a mistake. That was tuition. It's the quiet mentor who hears you say, I spent everything, and doesn't flinch. But most of all, love is the voice you reclaim when you stop asking others if you deserve to exist in your own life. I don't know what the future holds for me and Katie. Some days we talk, some days we don't. But I no longer define my peace by how loud her absence is. I no longer shape my joy to fit someone else's comfort zone. And maybe that's what healing really looks like: living without permission. Loving without losing yourself. Choosing yourself. On purpose, without apology. Have you ever been the quiet one who gave everything, only to realize you weren't invited to the life you helped build? Have you ever carried a family, a friendship, a relationship while slowly vanishing inside it? If you felt that, not just the pain, but the hollow space that follows, know this: you are not a backup plan. You are not the strong one by default. You are allowed to stop. You are allowed to leave. You are allowed to be seen. If this story touched something in you, don't scroll past it. Share your story in the comments. Let's talk about what real love and real boundaries look like. Subscribe to Telling Story with Me for more stories that speak the truth people rarely say out loud. And if no one's told you lately, you don't have to give everything to be worthy. You already are.